Hi, I'm Ken Moore, and welcome to Local Matters. Well, today we've got a local matter. It's your health. And down in Amity, there's a place called DNA Physical Therapy run by an amazing staff. And the owner I have with me today, Andrea Bulat, and her assistant, Carrie Bonney. Welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you?
Great, great. I think that's what you are concerned about. How are you? People walk in the door, how are you? And you want to help them out because they come in limping or they can't move their head or whatever, and you take them
Yeah.
in hand. Well, how did this happen? How did DNA physical therapy come to Amity?
Yeah, I think, first of all, as far as Amity itself, I mean, we saw the need here. There wasn't any medical facility. So we wanted to be able to offer what we have as our service here in the community. And then DNA itself is very much about the full body approach. It's about using my experience as a physical therapist, athletic trainer, former high level athlete to be able to take an approach to someone's health that's not just trying to get them out of pain. It's very much trying to help them understand like where this pain came from, where it started, how can they help themselves and understand the process of working through the pain. And then through our services, we're really able to follow up and make sure that they don't lose connection with, I got out of pain, now what do I do? I've seen time and time again discharging someone from traditional physical therapy and they just have no idea what to do. So, what I found myself doing is helping them with a workout for the gym and following up on that workout and that's not considered your traditional physical therapy, but it's so appropriate to make sure that they don't end up coming back for the same injury, right? So
Very
that
good.
was the big motivation, is having this ability of someone to start at that pain point, but then when they leave, if they leave, it becomes that they're more empowered about how they can move forward with their fitness and their health.
Well, it sounds like you've got a lot of broad experience. How about schooling? What did you do in schooling for
Yeah, so
therapy?
I have a doctorate of physical therapy. I'm also a certified athletic trainer, and those two in themselves were very extensive as far as education and clinical rotations. I'm also experienced with personal training, coaching, and then just being an athlete myself. So it has been for me personally a lifelong mission, if you will, to create myself as an individual that can offer someone a lot of perspectives. And so that part was very important. I was your classic 4-year old in T-ball that was coached by their mother and her best friend. And I just loved sports and played lots of sports and got to the point where the sport I took at the highest level was throwing the javelin. I'm from Canada, so I actually had an opportunity to compete for Canada. And at one point, I held the Canadian record for the javelin. So that's
Oh,
fun.
God,
Yeah.
congratulations. That is awesome. Do you still throw now and then?
Now and then is a good phrase. Yeah, I mean, you can't help but when you pick up the implement, just want to do something with it. I've learned through also experience that I can't chuck it as aggressively as I used to because I do hurt myself.
Uh-huh,
But
uh-huh.
yeah, I mean, it's a perfect example of something that you have to train for. Otherwise, you are gonna just you're gonna cause problems. But it's fun. I mean, I'm excited. I love coaching it. I do want to get back to that. I haven't done that for a while, but the coaching side, I was able to bring a medical point of view, which I think has helped me be even better at that coaching part.
Yeah, yeah. Well, next Highland Games practice, I'll text you and see if you'll show up and
Well,
use some
it's
of that.
funny. Yeah, it's funny, Ken, because I've actually had one of the guys who trains with you. It was for physical therapy, so I can't share his name, but he invited me to practice, and I just never had a chance to go. It got rescheduled with rain and everything, so I do want to literally just show up at one of those practices soon.
Oh, that's great. Well, all right. Well, I think people that are watching this show want to know, they've got an ache and pain in their mind that they want to have fixed. We all do. And they're thinking, how are these people going to help me? So, well, Carrie, wait a minute. I think we talked earlier, you have some physical training. You went through Army boot camp, is that right?
Through Army boot camp.
Oh, wow.
I
And
did
so,
5 years in the Army. I was went through a number of different schools while I was there. So and then I was a runner for a long time as well. So I've run in probably about 20 half marathons and 2 full marathons.
wow, good for you. Good for you. Well, I guess in boot camp, you find out what you're made out of. Is that right?
A little bit, yeah. They tell you what you're made of. That's what happens.
All right. Well, great. Let's get to what you want to get across to the folks that are watching. Maybe there's a few common ailments that you want to help people through right now for free, just to give them an idea of the kind of thing that you do and how you operate.
Okay. Yeah, a great ailment, if you will, or a great issue is definitely low back pain. Um, 80% of us have low back pain somewhere, sometime during our life. So I think it's important just to talk about kind of why that happens and then things you can do for yourself. And then also like if if you have low back pain and it's not getting better or it's getting worse, like when do you decide to go to someone and then who do you decide to go to? I think that's a great way to approach low back pain.
Mm,
So one thing that's very important is if low back pain turns into anything down your legs, so numbness, tingling, even just tight hamstrings, like that's a sign you need to go see someone. And and then that being said, when you have low back pain, there's so many things that you can do to try and help yourself avoid that pain and then come out of that pain. So what we'll do today is we'll go ahead and we'll bring the camera over here to a mat
uh-huh.
and I'll demonstrate some things with Carrie. Bear with us as we kind of set up our mat,
Great.
but we can show you just things to look for as far as the low back pain and then exercises to do.
Very good. Very good. Go for it. Yeah, I heard you say tight hamstrings can cause, people think, well, the pain is shooting down my leg. Well, actually, it could be shooting up your leg, right? That the problem may be coming from down lower than just your lower back.
Okay, so
We're to see it.
trying to figure out. Okay,
Looks good.
try not to move it as I'm talking. So biggest thing we're looking at here when you're laying on the back is how much of your back is actually in contact with the ground. So I'm gonna have Carrie straighten out her legs. And when she does straighten out her legs, she'll have her hand on her back just like so, just kind of appreciating what kind of space that is.
Uh-huh.
And naturally, if she bends her knees back up, then she changes that space.
Okay.
Now the key is if you think of upright, we're not standing upright with both our knees up in the air,
Mhm.
right?
Okay.
So we want the legs to be straight out because that's going to be where we are upright.
Okay.
So the cue I would give her at her rib cage, and she would go ahead and put her hands on her rib cage, and then think of pressing her rib cage into the mat.
Ah,
So that creates that contact with the ground, and that actually aligns her spine much better. So when we think of any kind of exercises on the back, she always wants to have the ribs towards the back to
okay.
create that contact. So now what she can do is put her hands straight up to the sky and put her knees up, knees bent in the air at what we call a 90-90. So the knees are bent 90 degrees. And this position is dead bug. So in dead bug, she's still thinking about her rib cage pushing into the mat, and she's taking one arm at a time behind her. So the way we describe this is she has her trunk stability while she has her limb mobility.
Okay.
So if you think about a tree, right, you want a big, stable trunk. Otherwise, if it's windy, those branches are either moving all over the place or they're just breaking off.
Okay.
Okay. So upper body is generally an easier one for someone in low back pain. lower body, she's going to go ahead and tap one heel at a time. This tends to be the tougher exercise for someone with low back issues, more so weakness. So things you want to watch for again with deciding should you go see someone else
Uh-huh.
or someone in general is if she was getting any popping in her hip, often the popping's in the front of the hip, then her body's just not quite set yet. So her hips need to be in a more neutral position. And that's where you get a manual therapist or, a physical therapist to be able to evaluate that and see how the pelvis could be misaligned.
Okay. Now, am I hearing this right, Andrea, that when you're doing these exercises, you're strengthening your core in a proper position you're holding a proper position, and then you're strengthening it in that position so that you can hold that position during the day.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a great way to summarize it, especially because the core is the way that we often think about our trunk.
Uh-huh.
And in this position in particular, with her being on her back, it's a nice safe position. So she doesn't really demand the stability that you have when you're standing or even if you're kneeling nice and tall. Now, that being said, her legs up like that, like that's not easy.
Yeah.
And so she could do this exercise from the ground where her feet start on the ground. And then when she brings her right arm back, she can bring her left leg up,
Uh-huh.
vice versa. So that's going to be a less intense exercise. So depending on your age, your experience, like the pain you're in, that might be the better way to go. And if you've ever had low back pain, it's not a very good experience at all. It's very debilitating. It's very scary. And so being on your back is a very safe position for someone. So if you can at least start engaging the core on your back in some way, then the low back pain can start to subside because it's at least the muscles are starting to help and work.
Yeah. Let me ask a kind of a general question. Would you say that what would you say if I suggested that a lot of aches and pains come from loss of muscle to hold your posture?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, posture is huge. And as we get older, I don't like to call people old ever.
Okay.
But as we do get older, we know that we start to migrate forward,
Uh-huh.
and I can actually do this now. So yeah, we certainly start to migrate forward. And what that turns into is the head goes forward, we round our shoulders forward. So when we think of our body as a whole, the front of our body starts to compress or it starts to shorten up. And then the back of our body starts to lengthen or it starts to stretch out. Generally speaking, our body wants to be symmetrical and our body wants to be even. So when we think about posture and this concept of stacking ourselves on from the top to the bottom, if we change that stack in any way, then the body is amazing because it figures out a way to stand up, but it just causes, pain and problems and wreaks havoc that typically, unfortunately, happens over time. So you don't recognize it until it's very, very late.
Yeah, and you've lost a lot of the ability to even hold the position. And these exercises you're giving are giving people a way to get the strength to hold the position, to keep them out.
Yeah,
I see.
exactly. And this is, again, a very safe place to start. And just to put in perspective, I mean, we see patients anywhere from 12 years old to 90 years old. And these types of exercise, this dead bug is something they're finally starting to integrate into your middle and high school strength and conditioning programs.
Mm.
So
Now,
really,
I'd like to just interrupt a minute on these exercises because when you move that camera around, I can see you've got quite a facility. Maybe Carrie could give us a tour.
Oh, for sure. All right. So I will take you. I'm going to show you the front. This is our reception area. We are COVID safe in here. We have our screen up. So this is kind of walking into the clinic, what you would see. And certainly we have a lot of equipment in here to work with.
Wow.
These can all be used for different things. So, not only does Andrea do physical therapy, but we also have small group training classes. And our small group training is an extension of our physical therapy. We do take insurance, but there comes a point in time when, insurance may say, "Hmm, okay, you should be better now." And we all know that that's not really how it works, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so what we do is we offer small group training, and that's an extension of physical therapy. And there's no more than 6 people, still an hour-long session. It's another thing to note about every session with Andrea is an hour long, and it's with Andrea the entire time. So you're with the doctor of physical therapy the full hour. But those sessions, there's only 6 people, so it's a different cost structure. You can certainly use FSA or HSA for those as well, but it allows people to kind of continue those, continue strengthening those muscles or those areas. And with the small groups, she can still, I mean, I've been in the classes myself where she's corrected my exercise or changed it, modified it for me versus, the other 4 or 5 people were doing something different. So she's able to do that. We offer buddy sessions. So if you and a friend want to come in together and just the 2 of you, so you're getting even more personalized. And then of course we do personal performance assessment. And then we offer, telefunction. So she can do physical therapy over Zoom, and also the personal physical training sessions, the one-on-one.
Great. You do personal, one-on-one, do group, and you can do over Zoom if somebody is just maybe they're have a compromised immune system or something. They're just being very conservative. They could get help on Zoom.
Yeah.
Great, great. But you're social distancing. You're doing safe practices, and it's working.
Yeah.
Great. Well, okay. Well, fix another part of us. What else you find hurts a lot?
Another part of us. Yeah, well, or even the shoulder.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I think the other one I would definitely go to is shoulder pain. And this is a good way of connecting, the thought process of physical therapy and the thought process of training. So one of the things I hear often of someone who goes in the gym, works out, I'll get a 50-year-old who's, an avid strengthening guy, and he does his bench press and his rows, and he does his shrugs and things like that. And he won't do shoulder presses because somewhere along the way, someone said, when you're 50 years old, you should completely stop doing a shoulder press.
Keep your hands below your shoulders.
There we go.
None of this. I got the same thing from a physical therapist at a very exclusive exercise club.
Yep.
And since I talked to him, I got fixed a whole nother way. So I wish it probably would have been with you if it hadn't been with somebody else. But yes.
Yeah. So
Don't buy that.
So that's like a perfect example. And that's why I bring it up, is because when I heard that the first time, I was like, well, why did they say that? What was the explanation? Because I couldn't understand why you wouldn't want to lift your arm overhead, right? So the biggest reason was, because every time I do it, it hurts. So, okay, well, why don't we figure out why it hurts? Let's not just like decide we don't want to lift overhead because you're going to clean out your garage and you're going to lift 50 boxes overhead, to put on that shelf, that you're going to do that on a Saturday for about 6 hours. And then, of course your shoulder is going to hurt. But really the reality is, when it comes to the shoulder, there's so much involved that the last thing we want to do is not lift our arm overhead. And the second last thing is we want to lift weight over our head. We don't want to be crazy and lift 100 pounds over our head, but there's no reason we should avoid that. So when we're thinking of, really 3 things you would do for your shoulder, we'll go ahead and kind of set up again, but we would start with the foam roll. Thankfully, the foam roll is way more popular these days. We got to the point here at the clinic, if you're a patient with us, if you're a client with us, and we find the foam roll is going to help you, we're actually just going to give you a foam roll instead of you having to worry about finding one. We'd rather just give it to you, and you have a tool now, and you can use that as a tool. So we're going to go over here and we're going to start using the foam roll. But what we'll have Carrie do is she's going to lay on her back, and she's going to put that foam roll along the middle of her back. So again, we're still treating the shoulder here, but she's going to go ahead and put her arms just behind her head, just to support her head. And actually, Carrie, go ahead and come forward. Try and do the camera and do this. So go ahead and come forward so your bottom's on the ground. Yep. And so the foam roll here is at the middle of the back.
Uh-huh.
And so for women, that's going to be that bra line, which is often very tight in general. So this is going to be helpful in its sense. But in that position, she's just rolling back and forth from the top of the shoulder to kind of mid back. We actually do not want to get into low back with the foam roll, because there's just not a lot of support that you get from the rib cage when you're on the foam roll.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to stay within that rib cage. And often you're going to hear your snap, crackle, pop as you do this. That's not a bad thing. It actually is just getting movement. We call it cavitation in that area, in those joints. And what this does is it loosens up her upper back. So whenever you lift your arm overhead, you have to have motion in your upper back to be able to do it.
Mm.
And so this is the first thing we'd want to do, is mobilize the upper back.
So tight muscles, shortened muscles, or can impede your movement.
Correct. Yeah.
This is lengthening out the muscles. How about fascia? That's a word that people are talking about these days.
Yeah, it's a great word, actually. but more with this one, as much as the muscles being short, it's also the joints lock up because the muscles are short.
Okay.
So we want to open up the joints here in the upper back, and then that allows the muscles to release more. So we have more room for the muscles to do their job.
I see.
And then when it comes to fascia, fascia literally is all over our body. The best way I understand it is thinking of a network of spider webs. Okay, so you have a network of spider webs that are covering our muscles and covering our tissues and covering individual groups of muscles and then individual muscles.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's any adhesions or any tightness in that fascia, then the tension or the tightness starts to wreak havoc in that muscle group or at that muscle, and doesn't allow the muscles to glide next to each other as well as they could. And so now then you start to pull. So upper back's a good example. If the upper back is stiff and tight, then it'll start to pull on the back of the shoulder.
Well,
and the pain the person might feel is in the back of the shoulder, but the issue is actually because they don't have movement in their upper back.
okay.
So next thing we'd want to do, we talked about 3 different exercises here. So the next thing we'd want to do is actually get her on her hands and knees. And so while she's on her hands and knees, let's see if I can do this. There. While she's on her hands and knees, the first thing I'm talking about is wrists under the shoulders and knees under the hips.
Okay.
Okay. And then with her head, we'd want to have her tuck her chin in and take her shoulder blades and slightly peel them back. But then she's going to push away from the ground. So that creates, go ahead and push away a little more. There we go. That creates stability in the shoulders. So this is a good way to load the shoulders. So notice how we're not yet over shoulder height. So we haven't lifted over shoulder height yet.
Uh-huh.
But we're loading the shoulders. So we're getting the stability in the shoulders to start activating. And a very simple one is for her to just lift one arm at a time. I call it T-Rex hands or T-Rex arms.
Uh-huh.
And so she ends up loading. When she lifts the right, she loads the left and vice versa.
Uh-huh.
So that's a very simple load. Now, when you take someone who needs to lift a lot of weight overhead or throw a lot of weight overhead, then we want to add resistance. So she's going to wrap this mini band around her hands. And she's going to do that same motion, but she's going to provide resistance with the mini band. And then now she can start going out to the side with one and then alternate with that. She can go forward. And then she can also go out on an angle.
So now you're working both shoulders. One that's down is working because it's supporting the body, and the other one's working because it's going in all these different directions.
Exactly. Yep, exactly.
And
so
yeah, that one that went forward, now you're starting to get overhead a little bit.
Exactly. And then along with that is we're starting to activate 4 different directions. So our shoulder moves in literally 360 directions.
Ah.
So we would do a disservice if we didn't train in different directions. Okay.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah. And so then we'll have her stop there. I'm going to grab one more piece of equipment. I'll be right back.
So Carrie, how's that feel? Your shoulders burning at all? What muscles is that hitting?
Oh, you can feel it. And you know, it gets a lot in here, but it's definitely, you can tell you're working your shoulders, and when you're really paying attention to keeping them right where they're supposed to be,
Uh-huh.
start to realize how much sometimes when you're working out or you're doing a move that you actually allow them to get out of alignment, so to speak. And you kind of, when you're thinking about it, and you pop them back into space and into the right place while you're moving.
Well, that position gets you in good alignment while you do the exercises.
Correct. Yep. And so I'm going to have her do the next one first without resistance, and then we'll go ahead and add it.
Okay.
And then one of the things we do, Ken, is we also add a mini ball on her back.
Uh-huh.
And it's in what that does is when she lifts arms or legs, if that mini ball falls off,
Uh-huh.
gives us the feedback that she needs, that her hips are not, or her trunk and her hips are not supporting the movement.
Ah. So this keeps the core stable. It keeps it locked in a position.
Yeah. So and think of it as the feedback the body needs to stay there versus locking, because the core is going to move a little bit, but this gives it kind of that freedom to have the movement it should have. But if she were to she's going to bring her leg all the way back and just kind of wing it towards me, and then the ball either is going to move a lot or it's just going to completely off. So now as we go back to the upper body, she's going to keep her position, and she's doing great. It's like she's been coached at this before, right?
It's like I've done it.
So she's still wrists under the shoulders, knees under the hips. I would have her knees just slightly wider. And then she'll take her left hand and she'll start reaching forward with it. And she'll alternate with that. And we have mats that create either a handprint or a knee print. And that part's important because when you come back, you always want to go right back to that print. Especially with the knees, because the knees tend to go close together.
That also tells me your mats are nice and soft.
They are. They're very comfy. They're very comfy. So as she's going through this, we're getting overhead, notice?
Yes.
You know, we're getting overhead in this, what we call a quadruped position. But now we want to add resistance, and we're activating these muscles. So, you know, we've got all kinds of fancy equipment here, but you can manage something like this with a piece of TheraBand or tubing. So what I'm going to have her do is she'll have her left hand in the strap, her right hand in the strap, and then this is going to be around her foot. So her left foot. Good, lift your knee, right? Yeah, there you go. Back down. Yeah, there you go. So now her anchor, you can put that down. Won't bring that back. Yep. So her anchor is just on her foot. So again, you can do this with tubing or TheraBand. There's all kinds of things. It's basically just one big piece. So because the anchor is her left foot, she's only lifting the right arm. So she's going to go ahead and lift the right arm, and she's got some decent resistance to lifting that overhead.
Ah.
And you may notice, like, she's not lifting all the way straight up.
Okay.
And that's okay, because that's what the band is allowing her to do.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd rather use the feedback of the band and have the appropriate resistance where she gets to that hard but doable spot. And then more importantly, that she doesn't have pain doing this. So these are all things that she can train in a challenging position, but not trying to add weight yet until something like this is pain-free.
Great. So they can do it with just free form until that's easy, and then, or pain-free, and then go to some resistance, and then maybe go to some weight. Now the weight is another step, and that's what you are also good at transitioning people back to their weightlifting, if that's what they were doing or wanted to do.
Yes, exactly.
All right. Well, we're getting near the end, but I wanted to make sure that Carrie got to describe the offerings that you have there in that we don't miss anything of what you do.
Sure. So obviously traditional physical therapy, Andrea is certified in a technique called active release technique, which really allows her to get in when you have, sometimes those nerves get trapped inside those tight muscles. And so she can really get in there. She knows some special techniques to get into those muscles and help release those nerves, to help release some of that pain immediately, and then work with you on the physical therapy and the exercises that you can do day to day. And then of course we have our small group training and our buddy packages and personal one-on-one training. We have packages for all of those available. We're now offering a month-to-month, 1 year or 6 month plan for our small group. So you can pay by the month instead of paying for all your visits up front. And then we take insurance, a number of them, not every single one, but you can call and we can talk you through what we can do. You can use your FSA and HSA for anything here at the clinic. And again, we offer those the one-on-one training and the physical therapy on Zoom.
Wow. Okay. Well, do you prefer that people call, or is drop in okay?
So they need to call, or they can go online. So
Okay.
they can call us at 971-708-6113, or they can go to our website, which is dnaptathlete.com.
And if they forget all that, if they just Google DNA physical therapy, it'll pop up in Amity, and go to the website and it's all there. All right. Well, anything that's just on your mind that I haven't touched on yet, or how would you wrap up this session to let people know that you've got what they need if they're hurting?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add, our name DNA Physical Therapy and Athletics sometimes is a deterrent because people feel like, oh, I'm not an athlete. Bill Bowerman, heavily involved in Nike. I think all of us Oregonians should know who that is. He always said, if you have a body, then you're an athlete. So that's our mentality here. We're not turning people away because they can't, slam dunk a basketball. It's more about just getting people moving, recognizing that we all have to be active, especially during this time, but we just all have to be active again, and understanding you don't have to hurt to be active.
Very good. Well, I think that's a really great message to end on. You don't have to hurt to be active. That really keeps people from doing what they want to do. Oh, if I do that, I will hurt. And so if that's stopping you, there is a way forward.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you so much again for being on the show today. And I know people watching are glad they were here. So hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.